All right, so I'll call to order the Business Management Committee meeting for Thursday, March 30th. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the last committee meeting in February. Could I have a motion and a second, please? Properly moved and seconded. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Let's go ahead and vote, please. And the motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of investment advisory services, RFP P50072. Mr. Kevin Hurley, Deputy CFO, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, members of the MARTA Business Management Committee, Mr. Greenwood, and Mr. Cernoff. I'm here today to present for committee consideration a resolution to allow the general manager to enter into a contract for investment advisory services, RFP P5002. Next slide. Our agenda consists of a short discussion on the background of the contract, details on the solicitation process, and the Source Evaluation Committee's recommendation. Next slide. The contract will support the MARTA non-represented employee 401A defined contribution and MARTA employee 457B deferred compensation plans. The investment advisor will monitor and report on fund and fee performance to the defined contribution plan committee while ensuring that underperforming funds are placed on fund watch and potentially replaced in accordance with the investment policy statement. The investment advisor will coordinate investment policy statement changes with the record keeper and plan attorney and will aid in the solicitation and implementation of a new records keeping services RFP. The contract duration is for 3 years with 2 one-year options and replaces the current contract that expires on June 30th, 2023. The costs of the contract will be paid from the underlying plans that it's advising upon. Next slide. A competitive RFP was conducted by the plan committee members with established evaluation criteria. 9 proposals were received by the deadline and 7 proposals were deemed responsible and responsive. The SEC conducted a technical review with scoring resulting in shortlisting 3 firms who were brought in for interviews. The firms were Callan & Associates, ANCO Consulting, and Retirement Plan Advisors. After presentations and a BAFO request, the SEC voted unanimously to recommend award to ANCO Consulting. The cost of the contract is $275,000, which is $56,000 lower than the previous contract. I also wanted to point out that a 0% DBE goal was assigned to the contract due to lack of DBE firms in the industry and lack of ancillary opportunities. Next slide. I respectfully request the approval of the Business Management Committee of the resolution to allow the General Manager to enter into an agreement with ANCO Consulting for RFP P50072.
If we could have a motion and then a second. Properly moved and seconded. It's on the floor for discussion. right, seems to be straightforward. Good job, Kevin. We will go ahead and vote. Okay, the motion passes. Kevin, thank you very much. You can stay up there
Yes, sir.
for the next item on the agenda, a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for professional services for investment management. Letter of agreement L50288.
Good morning again, Mr. Durrett, members of the Business Management Committee. As the chair said, I'm here to present for the committee's consideration a resolution to enter into an agreement of L50288 Investment Management Services. Next slide. The agenda consists of some discussion on the purpose and need for this contract, some details on the proposed contract information, and the recommendation of staff. Next slide. Over the last 2 or 3 years, MARTA's reserve investment portfolios have grown considerably due to the expedient use of COVID relief funds, sales tax rebounding quickly and remaining strong after the pandemic, and delays in the execution of capital projects that have resulted in MARTA running surplus sales tax at the end of the last few fiscal years. The temporary increase in the size of these portfolios presents the need for additional contracted assistance to support investment activity. Entering into the contract to provide active temporary investment management assistance is more cost-effective compared to adding full-time equivalent positions on a short-term basis. The net increase in returns due to the active management approach over the life of the agreement are estimated to be $4 to $5 million above the returns generated by MARTA's standard buy and hold to maturity approach. This $4 to $5 million above our standard approach is inclusive of netting out the costs of this particular contract. The need is anticipated for approximately the next 3 years, when we anticipate the reserves to come down to more manageable levels. Next slide. The proposed contract term is for 3 years at a not to exceed value of $1,590,000 for the 3-year period. The contract will be supported by the operating budget and will be funded by the investment earnings themselves. Internal audit has been requested to do a price cost analysis to determine that the pricing is fair and reasonable. The recommended firm, Payden and Regal, has considerable experience providing investment management services. They're an independent global leader with $133 billion of assets under management, and are recognized as a pioneer of short-term fixed strategies for entities like MARTA. They focus on understanding investment guidelines, liquidity tiering, accounting considerations, and reporting requirements, and have several transit agencies and governmental clients in their client portfolio. I also wanted to note that there was 0% DBE goal levied against this contract as well, for the lack of firms in the industry and lack of ancillary opportunities. Next slide. I respectfully request the MARTA Business Management Committee authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with Payton and Regal for investment advisory services, letter of agreement L50288.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll entertain a motion to approve in a second. Okay, I see over here, it's not coming up on my screen, but Frida made the motion and Rod, you seconded it. Discussion, conversation? Jacob?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, very helpful. Love this, this work. Just, given everything going on in banking, wanted to ask the question to better understand. Do we hold any like long-term fixed, income assets that we have a risk as an agency, similar to what we've seen in the banking sector, or is it most of it in shorter term because it's reserves that we expect to spend?
Yeah, we do invest more than 1 year, but it's very limited. Most of our investments are very liquid, just for the precise reasons that you're alluding to. So we don't get in that type of trouble. We also take steps with all of our banks to be properly collateralized for all of our investments. There is one investment that we have that spreads the investment across multiple banks, but they're all below the FDIC insured level. So we've got all of our safeguards in place to protect us from something like this, what's happening to the banking community right now. Yes, sir.
Rod?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hurley.
Yes, sir.
This particular proposal, it's only one person that has agreed to participate in it. It's one company, rather. So help me understand what makes this particular company the only one that seems to be able to do this type of business.
This is a professional services contract. This is a company that's come recommended from other people that we have relationships with. They're certainly not the only company that can do this. That's why audit is going to go through and look at the pricing and revalidate that it's fair and reasonable. I have confidence that it's fair and reasonable because we have other fixed income advisement, say for the defined contribution plan, the current investment advisor and the record keeper's fees are higher than what is being proposed in this particular transaction. So they're an industry leader. They're one of the major players in this space, and the pricing is below what we typically would see. So I think that's the angle that we've taken when putting this in place.
Okay. Have we ever used this company's services before?
I personally have not. I
Have not,
believe
okay.
we have, I believe Mr. Srinath has been exposed to them in prior places that he has worked.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Raj.
Internal audit has already conducted an audit on this and determined the price to be reasonable and fair. And yes, I've used this firm at my former employer, and they're definitely, as Kevin said, one of the global leaders on this. And 7 basis points is one of the lowest I've seen in the industry as fee. Yes, as the assets under management go up, pricing may reduces to 7, but the base is 9. But after, I think, about $150 million or so, it reduces to 7. That's one of the lowest I've seen. So, I mean, it's definitely one of the top-notch firms. We have checked the references on that. They do manage investments for several transit public agencies, including a few that I'm aware of in the state of Georgia.
In fact, I checked pricing with some of their other clients in the transit space, and our pricing that is being offered is lower than what they're being charged currently. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Then let's go ahead and vote. It's not popping up on this screen, but I'm looking to the right, and it looks like it has passed. Thank you, Mr. Hurley.
Yes, sir.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for maintenance of parking control equipment, contract RFP P46686. Michelle Malone, Director of Revenue Operations.
Good morning, Mr. Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Srinath, and committee members. I am Michelle Malone Thompson, Director of Revenue Operations. Today, I will be requesting an extension of the contract for maintenance of parking control equipment, RFP P46686. Next slide, please. The purpose is to gain approval of the MARTA Board of Directors for the GM, CEO, or his delegate to grant an extension of the maintenance contract for aging parking control equipment. The contract extension will keep the equipment operational until the automated parking and revenue control APARC project is fully implemented. The projected start date for implementation of APARC is June 2023. The expected completion date is December 2024. Next slide, please. The existing parking equipment was purchased approximately 30 years ago and is past its expected life cycle. The manufacturer is no longer making replacement parts, and MARTA is currently using refurbished parts from the vendor access control systems that other entities have discarded. The contract extension will be for 18 months for $205,023 to allow for the implementation of the new APARC equipment. Next slide, please. The original contract value was $150,780 for 18 months with no option years. A previous modification increased the contract value from $150,780 to $199,880. Due to the original amount of the contract being under $200,000 and being considered as part of the Small Business Enterprise Program, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion did not assign a DBE goal for this contract. This contract is being funded with 100% local operating funds. With additional funds being requested, this would increase the total contract value to $404,903. Next slide, please. I respectfully request your approval of an extension for contract RFP P46686 for the maintenance of parking control equipment with access to control systems. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion and a second on this resolution. All right, we have a motion and a second. Questions or conversation? Does this have something to do with the gates in the parking deck constantly being open down there?
Probably so,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Is there a,
Jim.
oh, hi there.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
This is a question more so for Paula. Can you explain to me, just from my understanding, like with this being a part of the Small Business Enterprise Program, why it doesn't require a DBE goal?
So the FTA actually requires, as part of our overall DBE program, that we include a small business enterprise program. That program is a race-neutral program. And race-neutral meaning we don't assign a DBE goal. It's open to any small businesses to get these dollars. Now, we do keep account of if a DBE firm actually is the one that's awarded the contracts that come up under our SBE program. But because it's race neutral, we can't assign a goal to it. And we only do that right now for the contracts that are under $200,000.
Thank you for that. Yes?
Hi. Is the underlying, sort of final replacement project taking a lot longer? I'm just wondering why this is.
Yes, so there have been delays on the A-Park contract, and we're in the midst of doing modifications. So there has been delay as far as we have to do changes in pricing for the equipment. In the contract, it also stated that we needed some specialty staff members that the contractor has to hire before we can even start implementation.
Okay. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's not a great look to have a contract to have to sort of double the amount that you had for the temporary measure to, have to add 100% more to the temporary measure.
Any other questions? All right, then I'll call for the vote. Properly moved and seconded. I need to hit refresh. Where? We're having technical difficulties. And not only regarding this, but Jennifer, this is for you. I believe that there is a missing connection between the microphone at the lectern and the speakers that are at this end of the room. So I think that we need to have that addressed for later on, okay? All right, please vote on the resolution. The motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for mass notification system, RFPPP 48760, utilizing the Federal General Services Administration contract. Kirk Talbot, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Srinath, members of the Business Management Committee. Next slide, please. Good morning. This is a request to add additional credits to our contract P48760 with Everbridge. This is the software that we utilize to push out notifications and information to a number of different systems. So when there are bus delays, if there's emergencies or any kind of information that needs to be pushed out to the public. This software allows us to take it from the underlying source and then push it to our signs, our mobile applications, Twitter, all the different means that our customers communicate with. What we're looking to do is add an additional additional $109,844.15 to this contract to give us additional message credits. What happened when we entered into the 3-year contract, we signed up for the number of credits that we thought we would use, and it's become much more prolific as we've communicated during the pandemic and other things. So we're looking to add additional value onto the existing contract. While we're doing this, we were going to be competitively sourcing the contract as it expires next year. So we're going through the process, and you'll note that we originally had anticipated 9.5 million credits per year. Now we're upping that to 20 million credits based on the system utilization that we have. There are no DBE changes to the goal originally as it was assigned on a GSA contract. The nature of this procurement generally results in minimal DBE participation. But as an addition of dollars, there's no modification to that original. Next slide, please. This is just a slide showing the various places that we communicate out using the Everbridge technology. Twitter, MARTA on the Go app, Avis signs, and a number of other means, website. Next slide, please. Here we have a history on the contract, the dollar amounts that have been added over the 2 years that we've been utilizing this contract. On the last slide, please, you'll see a summarization. One more, please. It's so good they have to prep. There we are. Thank you. Our current value is set at $196,000. We're adding an additional $109,000 to carry us through the end of the term, which will be in next August of 2024. So in summation, asking for Board authorization to add an additional $109,844.15 for message credits to this contract with Everbridge. Next slide, please.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion and a second. All right, properly moved and seconded. Questions? Frida?
It's just a simple yes, no, I don't need any details, but at the audit committee, we did discuss that there had to be several upgrades to our systems over the next few years to address some of our cybersecurity. Is any of this part of that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Stacy.
Quick question. A couple slides back, it showed overages that we incurred. What were those? What does that entail?
So when we originally set the contract, we anticipated, I don't know what I think it was 9.5 million messages in a year. The overages were because we exceeded that number of messages initially. If each year you have the ability to add expanded capacity, if you will. And that first year, we were, I'll say, surprised by the volume of communication that went out, if that makes sense. Those were those overages that we added.
Okay.
It's called over-communicating.
Yes.
Any other questions? Then I'll call for the vote. The resolution passes. Thank you, Kurt. In other matters, I'll call your attention to the fiscal year 2023 February financial highlights and financial performance indicators included in your packet that you received already. Is there anything else to come before this committee? Seeing none, then we will end this meeting, and PCP is next, which is going to be a lot longer than this one was.
Let's get started with approval of the February minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the February 23rd, 2023 minutes? Moved by Jacob, seconded, I don't see it. Seconded by Jim Durrett. Okay. Could we vote? Motion passes. All right, let's get into the goods today. First item on the agenda is resolution authorizing the disposal of permanent easements to the Georgia Department of Transportation in the amount of $49,800 for traffic signal upgrades at 4 tracks along State Route 29, Lee Street, within GDOT Parcel 6, MARTA Parcel D4186B, Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia. Ms. Robinberg?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning, Chair Blakely, GM Greenwood, members of the committee. This is, GDOT has been doing traffic signal upgrades between the Lakewood station and the West End station. And I came a couple of months ago with 3 of their parcels, and this one hung out there by itself because they originally valued it as a fee purchase instead of an easement. So this is, if you could go to the next slide, please. This is for GDOT's Parcel 6, which includes 4 tracks for MARTA. It's $49,800, and these are for non-exclusive permanent easement agreements. There is FTA interest, and we have already received approval from the FTA. So if you could go to the next slide. This just shows these 4 locations are between the Oakland City Station and the West End Station. And in the next slide. These are just the 4 streets. There's one at White Oak Street and Lee Street. And the next slide. Dimmick Street. And next. Donnelly Street. And then the last one is on White Street. And so we're just asking for authorization to dispose of permanent easements to GDOT for their traffic signal upgrades. Are there any questions? Oh, the next slide. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion in a second. Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Right. April Fool's Day a little early this year. Are there any questions, discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Thank you.
And it passes. Next item on the agenda, resolution authorizing the award for a contract of the procurement of I-285 top end VRT planning study, RFP P50012. Mr. Larry Prescott, good morning.
Good morning, Chair Blakey, Mr. Greenwood, committee members. Last year, we were before you with a joint presentation with ATL on the top end collaboration with them. They provided us a $16 million sponsor funds to look at the top end from 20 to 20. Next slide, please. Since then, GDOT has combined, thank you, into a cost revenue model similar to what they're doing for Georgia 400. The segments that are on the west, the top end, and the east side into one program from 20 to 20. This joint venture with ATL and the funding allows us to look at from HE Homes on the left side all the way around to the Indian Creek on the east side. So in doing that, we're allowed to bring in Cobb County, Gwinnett, along with ARC, GDOT, and ATL, even though Cobb County and Gwinnett are outside our jurisdictional areas. So we can do this in one combined BRT program in conjunction with the Express Lane program. So next slide. This high-level schedule kind of lays out the program of around 18 months. All these tasks that we can do in parallel with the Express Lane program will allow us to get the BRT integrated in with the Express Lanes. As they develop, we will be hand in hand with them, similar to, again, to what we did on Georgia 400 BRT. Next slide, please. So look at the status. So we advertised the RFP back in December. The Source Evaluation Committee, which was comprised of not only MARTA members, but also Gwinnett County, Cobb County, ARC, ATL, and GDOT. We reviewed, the SEC reviewed 2 of the 3 proponents that came in that were qualified. We scored them, reviewed them, scored them, and we did interviews. And then we selected the most qualified proponent for these services. So next slide. The SEC is recommending the CDM Smith team. The CDM Smith team has 7 of the 10 sub-consultants shown on the right, which are in bold, are DBE consultants. The contract term is 2 base years with 2 one-year options. I know I said that the 18-year schedule is what we had as a high level. That 2-year covers the base covers that, but as we learned with GDOT on the Georgia 400, it has extended. We want to be prepared to cover that in the future if need be with the 2 option years. The total cost is the $6.7 million. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion has concurred with the ATL recommendation of a 9.6 minimum DBE participation, since this was an ATL contract and funding. But CDM Smith, with their 7 DBE sub-consultants, has committed to a 20% DBE goal. Next slide, please. With that, I'd like to request the approval of the resolution authorizing contract award with the procurement of I-285 top-end BRT study, planning study, RFP 50012. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Could I get a motion in a second? Moved by Ms. Hartage, seconded by Ms. Williamson. Discussion, questions? Mr. McMurray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend MARTA for advancing this procurement as a team, as we talked about. So thank you, Mr. Prescott, for your work of this most important work that will run commensurately as we advance the 285 Express Lane projects, of which we at GDOT believe that the transit is a vital component of the success of the future Express Lanes, as demonstrated of the current project on 400, of which MARTA and GDOT and CERTA and the ATL have greatly partnered through the last few years. So I don't get to vote here, but if I would and could, I would vote yes, but I can't. And I can't lead you, so that was just a comment. I feel like the session's over as of last night, but it feels like the session, I guess. But this is vital work, again, that will be commensurate with, as we advance a very complex and large procurement to develop multimodal transportation solutions for Metro Atlanta. So again, Mr. Prescott, thank you for your work and continued partnership. And as this goes forward, it will be certainly informative, educational, and supportive of the goals that we're all trying to achieve. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the presentation. Mr. Andrews, keep me honest if I can ask this question. But I was looking down on the solicitation. I noticed that the pricing on the 2 proposals that we got, the one that we didn't select, was substantially different. Is that normal? Was there a difference in scope? We'd just love to know why one was more than twice.
That is pretty normal.
Okay.
We were pretty straightforward with what our overall program was. And we broke it out in segments, so there were some assumptions made that by the consultant that came in higher that weren't what we were looking for within the program.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Durrett?
Yeah, In addition to echoing what Russell said, I want to request that we have some champagne on ice when the board has an opportunity to vote this in the affirmative when next we meet.
Thank you. Janine?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just want to echo both the commissioners and Mr. Drett's comments. As you know, I sit on this board as the executive director of Greta, again, non-voting, similar to the commissioner. But this is such an exciting opportunity moving forward. It's the first culmination of the MOU that was signed last May, which in itself was an historic coming together regionally to approach a multimodal solution for probably one of our most significant corridors in the state, but also in the southeast. This facility, that's I-285, connects major employment centers, which is going to continue to be a driver of our economic success and our quality of life in the coming decades. And I'm just so excited about this multimodal approach, the options, the new options, cost-effective options that are going to be available in express lane transit for Georgia commuters, for Atlanta commuters, and just really excited for the ongoing partnership that's already rooted with this procurement and will continue through the project. So thank you.
Rita?
I just want to echo what everyone said, but I think it's important for some of our new board members to also know this is outside the box too, in that we've actually are talking to some of our regions that may not be currently MARTA members, but are certainly helping support this project. And as we move forward, will help us figure out how to take this region and make the transportation plan what it needs to be.
Thank you all. Can we please vote? And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Next on the agenda, the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of general planning consulting services, RFP P50.
Blakely, members of the board, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha. So this morning I'm here happily to ask permission for you guys to award the contract for the next general planning consulting professional services, RFP P50097. Next slide, please. Next slide. Today, just really quickly, I'll be giving you just a brief background on the accomplishments of the last 5 years for the last planning contract that we've had, and also just go over where we are with the current proposal and our recommendation. Next slide. So a little background, the Planning and Project Development Department is responsible for the planning, design, monitoring of bus and rail services. We use consulting services to provide critical support for the development and implementation of our projects. Next slide, please. A few of our accomplishments over the last 5 years, we were able to adopt at least 3 locally preferred alternatives: Campbellton Corridor, Clayton, Southlake, Clayton Southlake Bus Rapid Transit, the Clayton State Route 54 Bus Rapid Transit. We completed 30% designs on the Bankhead Station, Cleveland Avenue Metropolitan ART Rapid Transit, the multipurpose for Clayton, the Justice Center for Clayton, and also the Streetcar East Extension. Another, proud accomplishment of the planning department is that we now have the Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit that's at 100% design, and in the planning department we took it from a feasibility study all the way to 30% and then transitioned it over into the engineering department. Other work that was done by the consultants in the planning department were to help with our bus stop amenities projects, the bus network redesign, which you'll hear a little bit about later today, and also TOD master planning support, and also working with TOD for the federal opportunity feasibility zones. Next slide, please. So the general planning consulting contract overview will continue to support the planning services. It will continue to help us advance the MARTA 2040 expansion program. The contract amount is approximately $76 million. We are going to be contracting for a 3-year base term with 2 one-year options. And the DBE goal, as with the last contract, is going to be 25%. Next slide, please. Again, the areas that we are counting on our consultants to help us with are these 6 key areas: transit corridor and facility planning, communications and community engagement, transit service planning, policy planning, community environment and innovation, and grant writing. Next slide. So the contract in front of us was put out for solicitation on November 16th. We had our source evaluation committee. We received 6 proposals. There were presentations held earlier this month with the top 3 scoring proponents, and the final recommendation was for an award on the 16th of March. Next slide, please. Staff would like to recommend the award to HNTB, VHB, and WSP. Again, the contract value will be for $76 million, 3-year base term, 2 one-year options. Everybody has agreed to meet the 25% DBE goal, and that is something that if we have questions, Paula is here that she can respond to those. And next slide is just going to ask recommendation for the resolution to award the contract for P50097 to HNTB, VHB, and WSB. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Could I have a motion and a second, please? It has been properly moved in second. Questions or discussion? Valencia.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the 3 firms that were selected. Did you choose 3 firms due to the diversity of their expertise? How did you come to 3 firms?
Because of the complexity of all the projects that we have and also the continuation of some of the work that we're doing, we felt like 2 or 1 would be kind of limiting. So we decided to go with 3. We kept 3 as the number that we used the last time around, and the 3 were the top scorers, so we kept it at 3.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim?
Just to quickly respond to Valencia's question, since I've been here, the GPC has always had multiple firms to give us flexibility in assigning tasks to where it needs to go. And I just, keeping in mind the presentation we had recently about missing the DBE goal, I'm counting on you and the rest of the staff to actively monitor and manage that so that we don't get behind and we're scrambling to catch up. So
we will
just
be
making
doing
that
that.
point.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett.
Oh, I have a question to piggyback off of what Jim said. What are we doing differently with this contract to ensure that we're meeting, well, the design firms are meeting that 25%?
There is one program that we have, and I'll let Paula, we're actually going to make it mandatory.
To answer your question, there's a few things that we're going to do just to, in monitoring, to make sure that, you know, we're on top of this contract from the very beginning, and that we ensure that the firms here are meeting the DBE goal. It started with the selection of these companies. In their interviews, they all had to provide to us how they were going, that they would be using DBE firms, and even in their proposals, the firms that they would be using, and ensuring to us that they would be meeting the 25% or exceeding, because several of them said that they would exceed the 25% goal. But the ones that have not been through our Inclusion Matters program, and I talked a little bit about that in the last presentation, they will be going through that program. We will make that mandatory for this group. I think one of them, HNTB, has already been through it, but the other 2, we will be sure to make that mandatory for them. And then we will just make sure that we are monitoring, have a close relationship with the project managers that are on this program, and we will also have them go through Inclusion Matters so they kind of understand the importance of the DBE goal. But we will keep a close relationship with those project managers to try to ensure that we're making sure that we're doing our part to make sure that the task orders are having content in it for DBE firms, but then also so that if they see some things slipping behind, they're notifying our office, but we will also be monitoring it based on payments that are happening as well.
Thank you, bro. Jim?
Collie, this is probably for you. Yesterday I was in a meeting during which Lisa Gordon, the COO for the City of Atlanta, was describing how they have been working really hard to put technology and systems in place so that they can deliver services to the taxpayers in the City of Atlanta at a high quality level and consistently, and that by doing that, they're hoping that because of those systems being embedded there, it will last far beyond a change of administration and just be the way things are done in the future. And so with that in my mind recently, I think it would be really important for us here at MARTA as our legacy that we embed systems and practices in place that are going to outlive all of us so that we're no longer asking these questions about why this and why that in terms of DBE.
Thank you, Jim. Great point. And that is exactly the kind of thing that MARTA is moving towards, instead of just transactional wins and losses, to embed processes and practices that are going to outlast any of us. And I just wanted to kind of reflect on a couple of things that MARTA has done recently. One being, I think it was at our last meeting where we started to publicize the performance of some of our key contractors in this space, and we committed here that we would make it a continuous public dialogue just to make sure that it's, we're transparent in terms of how we're performing. And then the DBE roundtable at the other end of that spectrum, making sure, as Shelley said, that we have a granular level of exposure to the issues before they actually manifest in these types of system failures. So couldn't agree with you more. And the things, it's as though we're writing memos to ourselves to implement so that these things are ongoing.
Thank you, Jim and Carly. Can we please vote? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the resolution to approve a framework to guide completing a comprehensive bus network redesign by Mr. Ryan Bensicle. Ryan?
Good morning, everyone. Chair Blakely, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and members of the committee. Happy to be here this morning to request your approval for a framework to guide completing a comprehensive bus network redesign. Next slide. So this policy framework from the resolution will really shape and guide the next steps of the bus network redesign project as we move into the work to draft or to plan a draft new network. So in this presentation, we'll briefly cover the contents of the resolution, focus on a couple key items within it, and then cover next steps before asking your approval. Next slide. To give you a short overview of 4 key topics in the resolution. Firstly, it affirms the purpose and need for the project. Secondly, it sets a balance of how the new network would focus on ridership versus coverage, those two competing goals. We'll dive a little bit more into that on the next slide. Third, it incorporates the guiding principles that were developed in the board retreat spring of 2022 and makes those a fundamental part of how we're going to move forward. And lastly, it defines Clayton County's participation in the project. Essentially there, we're recognizing past policy guidance that really directs the growth and evolution of Clayton's bus network through other projects like the Clayton Transit Plan. And so we won't anticipate making substantial changes to Clayton County through this project. Next slide. So, as you may know, our past planning work focused on 2 hypothetical concepts that really lay out how the network could look if we focused primarily on ridership versus on coverage. And so you can see where those conceptual networks fell on the spectrum in the red and blue boxes below. You can also see the current system in the gray box above that spectrum at about 60% focused on ridership generating services and 40% on coverage. So the resolution includes a policy that would focus the new draft network somewhere around 75 to 80% on ridership services and about 20 to 25% on coverage. We feel that that represents a significant step towards higher ridership. It still allows us to provide for key coverage needs with the new network. We also felt that it was reflective of public input that we received through the process. We had, for example, a survey that received over 8,600 responses. Over 50% of those responses favored a ridership network, but we also had about a third of those responses, just over a third actually, that still favored a coverage concept. And of course, a healthy remainder between of folks who could not decide between the two. So we feel that finding the middle ground with this proposed ratio here allows us to address the public input and also takes a step towards higher ridership while providing the coverage. Next slide. I also wanted to recap the guiding principles that will really be fundamental to moving the project forward. So firstly, the new network should expand access to opportunity, including but not limited to access to jobs. Second, it should do this in a way that is equitable with a focus on our historically disadvantaged communities. Third, this project would be future-facing, so we want it to be something that anticipates changes coming to our service area, not just something that is a reaction to present-day conditions. Fourth, it would find the right balance between ridership and coverage, as discussed on the previous slide. And last, we know that the project will bring challenges, and we accept that. The network is intended to be a net improvement across the board, but we know that there will be some customers who have challenges as a result of some of the changes. We commit to working through that thoughtfully and thoroughly. Next slide. So immediate next steps. With the approval of this resolution, then the project would move into the draft network planning phase. And in that, then the project team will take the next several months to develop an actual proposed draft network. Once we have that network, then we would bring that back to board members and brief you before we launch a round of public engagement. Next slide, please. A little further out, as we go through that public engagement on the proposed draft network, we really will be doing that to get people's feedback, hear those concerns and challenges, make sure that we're aware and can address as many as possible. We'll also be working iteratively alongside that process to refine the plan along the way so that we are responding quickly to what we're hearing from people. It'll also include a thorough equity analysis to make sure that we're aware of the outcomes of this and that they are what we want. Once that process is completed, we would come back to the board with a final network plan, and with the board's approval, we would launch a 6-month intensive preparatory process to get ready for launch. Alongside that preparatory process, we would also do another round of public education to make sure that our customers, neighbors around the system are familiar with the changes to come and to try and make sure that everybody is informed and aware of the changes that we'll be bringing. With all of that said, we would be targeting a launch in the spring of 2024. Next slide. So that concludes our presentation. Here I'd like to request your approval of the policy framework that would guide completing our comprehensive bus network redesign. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I get a motion in a second, please? It has been properly moved and seconded. Questions and discussion? Ron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for doing this. This is really important for the presentation. How is this timeline lining up with our REACH program? I know we just finished and we had the results presented to us a couple months ago. Is the REACH program going to be ready for this launch?
Yeah, that is something that we're still working on. We're collaborating closely with the REACH team and the folks who conducted the REACH pilot. And so as we learn more about what the new network looks like and how much of the on-demand service we may include into it, the short answer is we haven't aligned those timelines yet. It's a little bit early to tell, but we do want to make sure that the REACH service is prepared and ready for the launch of the new network. It'll be important to have all of those pieces in place.
Jim?
Could you remind us about the public engagement that happened before this?
Sure. So we had an extensive public engagement process starting, I believe it was back in early 2022. And so as we developed those two hypothetical concepts, then we had a series of public meetings. They were in-person and hybrid, presenting the concepts to people and getting their feedback. We also had some follow-up additional virtual-only meetings for folks who couldn't make it to the first round. The survey was a critical component of that as well. The survey was administered not just online, but it was also administered throughout the transit system on buses, trains, at stations. I think we had over 50% of our survey respondents were in person from riders of the system, and so it was really critical to make sure we heard their voices very clearly in the results. In addition to that, we also had prompts to the survey through social media, email. I believe that we had some flyers and QR codes on mobility vans. We had them out on the ATL Express buses as well to make sure we were hearing from people who connected to MARTA, even if they weren't living inside the service area. And we also had several rounds of virtual stakeholder meetings. So we had academic institutions that connect and rely on MARTA. We also had some follow-up elected official briefings with city councilors and county commissioners.
Thank you for that reminder.
Sure.
Jacob.
First off, thank you for this presentation. Thank you for this work. I know it has not been a short period. I remember being on initial calls with Jared Walker when I was 2 employers ago, almost 4 years ago. So just thank you. The one comment I would just add is I think this is going to be extremely important. I think it's going to be transformational for the region in a lot of ways. And you know, with all that, I don't think this is going to be easy. So, you know, as we go forward, a lot of support, I'll say from where I sit, and very excited to be a part of this process. And I think, you know, really hope that the board will be engaged as we go through this process. I think everybody's supportive in theory, but, you know, once we start putting lines on a piece of paper is when this will get the most difficult, but it remains extremely important. So very excited to see it carry through, and just thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yes, thank you for this presentation. Circling back to Mr. Durrett, for the public input, how was the ridership and coverage sort of choice defined? I think that's always interesting when people give their opinion on something. Do they, you know, we don't know yet what that's going to look like, but there must have been something put out there for them to sort of bounce off of them and get an opinion from.
Absolutely. So with starting with the meetings, there were, I guess, several different components to this, but starting with the meetings, then each one started with a presentation that really tried to define just kind of the basics of what the ridership goal is, what the coverage goal is, what each of them really do, and how they kind of compete with each other. And so tried to start with the fundamentals and educating people on just what the principles were. However, as also part of that education effort, we had 2 different hypothetical transit networks that were developed. One of them looked at almost exclusively dedicating resources towards providing high ridership service. So essentially far fewer routes, but much higher frequency across the entire system, versus the coverage concept, which had a similar number of routes to what we have now, but much lower frequencies throughout the system. So we tried to not just show them kind of the principles and explain it, but we wanted to give them examples of what things would look like if you chased after one almost exclusively.
Yeah, because I imagine
together.
most people would like more frequency but not have their bus route cut.
Yeah. And that's exactly what that 4th guiding principle, finding the balance, is about. It's difficult to do both.
Yep. Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, you mentioned that the resolution would define Clayton County's role in detail, and in reading through the resolution, unless I'm missing something, I didn't necessarily see that. I saw where it said that Clayton County's current, network would remain substantially unchanged. Can you explain that a little further?
Sure. So with Clayton County, there's past policy guidance, I think primarily in the RTCAA's 14th and 15th amendments, that define what Clayton's future transit network plan should be, and also about sustaining the existing routes. And so those are really the 2 key pieces of policy that we interpreted for that particular part of the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Frierson?
Yeah, I understand that this is something that is long overdue and necessary. It will be painful. but it would be, I think it would definitely be transformative. When you start looking at contacting people concerning this bus design, how granular are we with that? I mean, I know what you're saying in terms of surveys, but there are people that ride the bus that have no idea that this is something that we're considering doing. And I want to make sure, maybe we're going to do that further down the line, but we have to be very intentional about reaching them, just communicating with them the necessity of what we're going to be doing, or maybe just what we're getting ready to do in terms of redesigning the bus configuration. I just want to know, have we approached it that way?
So we have not developed the strategy for the engagement for this next round. We'll be doing that as we prepare to do the draft planning here. But point certainly noted and understood. And it's critically important for us to make sure that we have full awareness of involvement of our current riders and the folks who are using the system today as we proceed with this process, since they'll be, you know, some of the folks who are most directly affected by it.
Okay.
Then I have one comment just in support of what Director Frierson was saying. Just how critical it is that we engage those people who depend on us the most. I know that in a prior project, you know, people were saying they didn't have the ability to get to the facility, or, you know, it's off the bus route, or they had to walk so far, and it just wasn't practical for them to attend, or they didn't, you know that this was happening. So, again, just reiterating, supporting what Director Frierson had mentioned.
Certainly.
Excuse me, I just wanted to add one thing. We're going to be very, very granular. We're going to go to, like, even internally at MARTA. This is something that we are going to make sure that everybody, bus operators, everybody is aware of, because we have a lot of people that interface with the public on a daily basis. So if we can make sure that our staff, everybody's aware of what's happening, they can answer questions. And then we'll be out in the public, the planning department. We are going to be at every event that we can be at, you know, talking to people, letting them know what's coming. So look out for a very robust campaign to be kicked off very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. And could we please vote? Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The next on. Okay. Next item on the agenda. Resolution to approve the locally preferred alternative for the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension Project by Brian Hotz.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Chair Blakely. Good morning to the board, Mr. Greenwood and Ms. Rocha. I'll come before you this morning to ask for the resolution to approve the locally preferred alternative for the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension Project. I'll preface by saying that this board has already approved for this project to move forward into final design. What we're doing right now, this is a technicality that we have to do based on the IGA between the City of Atlanta and MARTA. So this is one of the processes that we have to complete to move the project forward for an expansion purpose. So we have to have an LPA to do that. And so that is what I'm doing today, seeking that resolution to approve this locally preferred alternative for this project. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview and just give you a reminder of what we're doing here on the Streetcar East Extension, this extension does have shared lanes, shared transit lanes within the roadway. It is also dedicated lanes or dedicated right-of-way on the Atlanta Beltline. There are 5 proposed stations, 10 platforms for this project, and we are expanding the system and vehicle maintenance facility to accommodate the additional cars and the additional cars and maintenance that is going to be required for this project. And so, again, next slide, please. Again, so with that, I'm just basically asking for your approval of the locally preferred alternative for the Atlanta Streetcar East Extension project to satisfy the IGA between the City of Atlanta and MARTA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Could I get a motion in a second? It has been properly moved and seconded. Questions from the board? No questions? Seeing none, please vote. Jim, did you mean to abstain? Yes. Okay. Although it's not showing up, it looks like it is passed. Can we just move on? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next item on the agenda, resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for a system-wide communications-based train control, CBTC, RFP P50319. Mr. Prescott.
Good morning, everyone, again. We're talking about communication-based train control, another acronym, CBTC. So next slide, please. So currently, our existing automatic train control, another acronym, ATC, also known as our Train Control Network, TCN, consists of a single block program, which consists of a variety of existing equipment. Our 40-year-old legacy equipment was originally the United Signal and Systems USS program, which was bought by Ansaldo and then transitioned into current Hitachi. We also have Alstom program components out there with Gen 3 and 4 and 5. So pretty good mix of existing equipment out there. So I want to say, first of all, our system works. It is safe. It is our legacy program, but it does work. There are no issues with it currently, but I liken it to being able to, you want to tell time, we're looking at a grandfather clock versus the new smartphones that you're wearing today. So that's what we're trying to transition here. Okay, so the graphs on the left kind of show the maintenance of way, the MOW impacts, which affects operations, are directly correlated to the ATC delays by month, where we're having issues with the programming and the equipment. We're maintaining it, but as it gets older, that increases. As everyone knows, technology over time, it has a tendency to go obsolete and upgrade constantly. So as we're transitioning into that type of work, we're looking into how we can increase this operations as well as maintenance issues. So with the fixed block system, we want to look at trying to decrease that, the impacts to operations, and move forward with a more robust program. So next slide. So I said fixed blocks. as we're looking forward to the transition to CBTC and getting us into the future here, the top graphic there kind of shows the fixed block where we're broken out into blocks of areas where there's hard sensors that show that there's a train within the block. The additional concurrent trains do a look ahead, and they're not allowed to move into that block until that current train leaves it. So the safety doesn't allow 2 trains to be in the same block. Looking down at the moving block system within the CBTC, I liken it to an autonomous vehicle where the smart system communicates wirelessly. The vehicles are able to do a proximity location closer together and can be much more safer and interaction-wise rather than a fixed block component. Next slide, please. Looking at the advantages and disadvantages. As with any new system, there's new technology, much more availability of vendors out there, and ability to support that program. Reduction of the equipment. Going to a wireless system reduces the amount of switches and sensors out in the field and allows us to communicate better, which also allows the safety to be increased because we have less equipment in the field, less work we have to do in maintenance out in the field to be done with less hardware and more software. Again, I already talked about the train location. The train location proximity gets them a little bit closer. It gives us the ability to reduce the operational headways of 15 minutes now down to around 3 minutes during peak hours if need be. Of course, with any disadvantages of a new system is it's a different skill set. So we have an existing program we've had long-term, switching to a new technology, having to train new people, and as we're doing that, there's also transition. We have to maintain the old and the new during that transition period. And then long-term training that goes with that. Central control system, doing that replacement, we're going to have to maintain the existing program while we install and test the new system and integrate it in with the new CQ400 cars. Those cars are equipped with a CBTC hardware. One of the disadvantages would be that that hardware would have to be modified with another vendor. The system transition is going to be complicated because it is out there. We have to run them both at the same time. And vendor support is both an advantage and a disadvantage. Having vendor support on a technology-based system, we'll need that updates constantly as we go throughout the program. The disadvantage is we're stuck with that vendor for long term, so it's a trade-off. So next slide, please. So quick comparison. Like I said, any new system that would come up, there's going to be an upfront cost. The installation of new equipment, the dual programming of that, and maintaining the new education program for the support operations. But the new system will improve the overall service and operation long term, and to give us the ability to, again, have less equipment in the maintenance away to be maintained, which also increases our safety, not being in the wayside all the time. Now, CBTC is a international program. It's very prolific in the Europe train systems. It's relatively new in the U.S., but we have been collaborating with other systems. New York City Transit has already integrated some CBTC. We're working with BART. We're working with MTA. Well, MARTA is also doing the same thing, as well as PATH. So we are reaching out to the industry, so we're not doing this one-off. We're collaborating with them so that we're all doing a learning together, so to speak, going forward. So next slide. So this RFP, basically what it'll do is allow us to solicit a program, have the vendors come in and show us what they can do for us within our parameters and our safety operations. So them coming in also makes a showcase for us here locally, bringing this new technology, bringing us up to speed, state of the art, and looking forward to the future. A lot of SME subject matter experts within the industry would say that we don't need it now. We don't, but we're not looking at it now. We're looking for demand of the future 40 plus years. So that's why we're here to establish a long-term need for the future. Also, the RFP considerations will take into account the transition within the new vehicles, as well as the ongoing maintenance of the program that we have now. Our TCSU program was here last year, and they asked for spare parts to allow our current legacy system to be extended the next 5 to 10 years as this transition. So we've taken that into account, and that'll all be integrated into this program. We also allows us to look at what the vendors can bring to us, and it allows us to have the ability to look at cost and time, because time and money, anything can be done, but based on our needs and our abilities and impacts to operations as well as the public, we can make the decision at looking at what the best of the industry can provide us. Next slide. So with that, I'd like to request approval of the resolution authorizing the proposal for system-wide communication-based train control system, RFP 50319.
Thank you, Larry.
Sorry to add so many acronyms to your vocabulary.
Sorry about it. Can I get a motion and a second, please? Properly second and moved and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Mullis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is going to slide number 4. I think one more.
One more up. There you
go. This is just a general question about the potential respondents to the RFP.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to accept a response from all of the names on this list? Is everybody in good standing with MARTA right now?
Yes. There are up to 6 that we've identified currently, type vendors that do this procedure, and our RFP will be open-ended to anybody that can qualify within our procedure. So our RFP will set the established criteria to be met.
So we don't have anybody who we have any issues with on that list?
Well, we always have issues with all of our companies. We're constantly working with them on a regular basis.
Mr. Prescott, you're right. We always have issues. Can I direct this question to our general counsel?
Yeah, so the best way to answer is I'm not aware of any of the people on this list that have been debarred or are prohibited from participating in any federally funded projects at this time.
Good answer.
Mr. Durrett?
Larry, is the reason that the new rail cars have been designed and are being constructed in the way that you described here on this slide, and the fact that we are trying to broaden it and will then need to modify those, is that just simply due of our decision to consider going to CTBC in this way, happening months or years after we made decisions with the rail cars?
Yes, sir. The new vehicles are smart vehicles. They will do the legacy system and a CBT system simultaneously. So they have that capacity. So yes, you are correct. We hadn't gotten to that CBTC decision yet as we were reaching out to the industry, but we made the cars capable of doing it. And at the time, that was the only technology we had with the vehicle manufacturer.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that? I think even post-award of the new rail car, the agency has an increased level of awareness about the longevity or lack thereof of our existing fixed route system, the vital components, the vital relays, the expense of replacing them, the increasing expense, and the added or the decreased availability of some of those components. I think I heard Daniel, and Daniel's up now, telling me at some point a year or so ago about the fact that in some cases we're actually machining our own components. So as time goes on, our system becomes more and more bespoke, so the concept of at least considering a CBTC became more and more prevalent.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of simple questions. One is the fixed block system is not available anymore. I mean, why are we choosing the difference? I mean, I understand what you're saying here to the extent I'm capable of doing that, but I want to know if you decided the fixed block system is, because it looks pretty, to a simple-minded person, it looks, okay, that works. Mm-hmm. Why change? And I understand that, is nobody using it anymore?
Yeah, great question. I'm Daniel Hecht. I'm the Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer. The fixed block system, as Larry said, it's 40 years old, our current technology. It's really a 100-year-old technology. This has been used on a heavy rail for a long time. Our Gen 4 system that we primarily use in most of our train control rooms, it's supported by Alstom. They're the primary vendor for 38 of our 48 train control rooms, roughly. They have committed to only support Gen 4 technology for another 10 years. CBTC implementation can be very long process, take a lot of time. Other agencies are looking at 10+ years to implement a full CBTC system, which includes safety certification and the decommissioning of the current train control. That's why we have to start this now. We're looking 10 years out. We've also seen a dramatic rise in cost of the components for our traditional fixed block system. These components are old. They're electromechanical relays about this big in our train control room. There's just not many manufacturers that are compatible with our train control system, so we do have to custom make those. And then when we place orders, we see price increases on the order of 25 to 50% every time we place an order for spare parts.
All right, so on your slide there, you say the capital cost is lower in the fixed block and the higher in the, but that's because you can't buy the fixed block system anymore. You're just repairing it. Is that correct?
Correct. We are through the current Train Control and SCADA Upgrade Project, another acronym for you, TCSU. You all are aware of. That's a 10+ year project. We are ordering about $9 million in spare parts. That's projected to last us 2 to 3 years at current consumption rates. As part of that, about $4 million are in bonds that go in the trackway, their equipment. Those are custom manufactured for MARTA, and again, the capital cost to implement a CBTC system is higher, but our ongoing maintenance cost of the current track circuit system is exponentially rising year over year.
So when you say higher, you mean it's higher than what we're spending right now?
Yes.
To maintain this system?
Yes.
Am I understanding that right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then what is that number? What would you expect a system like this to cost in capital costs?
Well, that's why we're going out to the industry. We want to see what's out there available. With anything, time and money go hand in hand. So we're estimating anywhere from $300 million to over $1 billion. It depends on how quickly we want this done or how the impacts to operations are. So that's why we're doing this RFP, to be able to get what's out there and do a direct comparison.
Okay, wow. All right, life cycle cost, if I could elaborate on that just a minute. We're phasing out a system that you said is 100-year-old that we've had for 40 years old. How long is this new system supposed to, what is the life cycle for it? If we're going to invest $300 million, are we going to get 40 years out of it? Or is it going to change in 10 years? I mean, I know, so answer that, but tell me, and I'm going to record this.
I'll take first shot at it. Basically, having the fact that we're having less hardware will allow it to last longer, and having software be the driver of it and the communication base, that will update continuously. So 40 years plus is what we're projecting with this program, but as technology increases, we're expecting it to last longer and longer because it's a lot easier to maintain and grow and adapt for what's going on in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Williamson?
Yeah, you identified new workforce skill sets as a disadvantage. I'm assuming that's because this CBTC system is so new that your existing mechanics won't know anything about it and will have to be upskilled. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Our technicians now are amazing working out in the field, but everything is hardware-based. The new skill set is really going to be programming, software, computer-based skill sets. So we've already started discussions on what that entails for our current workforce, adding additional workforce, growing our own internal IT department, for example, to support this, because there's going to be new cyber risk and a whole lot of things that go along with it. So yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Russell?
Thank you. Mayor Floyd sort of got to the things I was going to get at, but I would liken the CBTC to your adaptive cruise control on your car now. Do you have that? You know, your car slows down and when the vehicle's in front of you is a certain distance versus in block would be synonymous if you're driving down the road and there's a police officer that tells you to stop and wait a certain time before you go for the next car goes. You know, your adaptive cruise control can moderate that space. So, and to Mayor Floyd's points, this is really a technology solution than a mechanical. I mean, that's the difference. Hard mechanical components that wear out versus technology. And I was just going to say that I believe this to be true because I saw it on the internet, is that the new heavy rail expansions going on, I believe in Toronto, this is the technology. As they expand and build, they're building this in because this is the technology that people's using. Nobody's wants to, and especially in the heavy rail expansion, nobody's using old technology. And so I was just going to throw that out as a little bit of a basis of why looking forward and making hard decisions now will pay dividends, especially in the headway. It's a safety always first here, but the headway, the advantages of having that sort of adaptive cruise control of headways can really lead to a lot more efficiency and effectiveness of the heavy rail system. So I just wanted to throw that out in a simple-minded way of comparing things to each other of a very complex system. But thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And thank you all. Could we please vote? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
It has to do with before you guys go out the door, is this all local money or, or is there hope to get some federal money involved in this project in the long run?
We will definitely need to look into that as we do with all of our programs to see what's available out there, yes.
I mean, those numbers are kind of scary, $300 million to $1 billion or something like this.
Yes, sir.
Is that in our planning, Collie?
Well, we are making arrangements to put that money in our budget. We just don't know how much money we're dealing with at this point. So as soon as we get some feedback from these companies, we'll be able to fine tune our long-term budget to, of course, to account for that.
Okay, well, are you calling this a state of good repair?
No, this is capital improvement. I don't know how I think I'm going to have to leave it to Raj and Carrie to how we characterize in the future. But at this point, we don't have that system, so we really can't call it state of good repair. It really is going to be a new system expansion. Okay,
it scares me a little bit that the system to operate these trains might cost more than the train cars, and I think it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I think it's more than it's the sum of the parts, right? So there's an initial expense, but as Larry has said, over the next 10 years with the rising cost of these components in the field, not only that the amount of track access time that we need just to supervise and fix the components in the field, when you take all of that out, there's going to be a lot of savings to counter the initial expense. We were talking about this some time ago, and I kind of said, it's if you buy a new Ferrari and you put the old winter tires on it, you're really losing some of the capability of your future expansion if you don't at least look at what the future holds. And as time goes on, if we're worried about missing pace with CBTC, we're really going to be we're in a different universe if we're still using the old fixed block stuff. And the safety, I think Russell was talking about that, the safety of the fixed block is heavily dependent on mechanics. You could have a trip arm that doesn't work, and that can have catastrophic consequences, and you might not even see it unless you're actually physically in the field to notice that this one cycle was missed. Whereas with CBTC, you'll have all kinds of indications, several trains going through the area on a regular basis, keeping track of each other. There's a lot of redundant safety features when you go to a system like that. And yeah, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little bit more, we started to convert in Toronto to a CBTC system on some of our lines. And, to this day, no regrets, no looking back. I will say 7 or 8 years ago, prices were a lot less. But who's to say where they're going to be in 7 or 8 years from now?
I think one of the things is this a lot of money, and I want these guys have to think we're serious about doing this, or they're not gonna get involved with us in helping us fix the cost. And I think one thing we need to understand here is the importance of doing this, and I think you guys have done a pretty good job this morning of helping me understand, okay, this is not just something to spend some money on. This is important. And I think Russell made that point, is that it's moving into the future, and it's, so anyway, I think the vendors need to understand somehow from us and this board that we are serious about doing this. If the number's $1 billion or if it's 300 million, we're serious about doing this because we feel it's in the best interest of this. So anyway, that is some closing comment.
Thank you, Mayor Floyd.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the resolution authorizing solicitation of proposals for the Automated Transit Network, ATN, pilot project, RFP P50320. Mr. Marcus Hunter.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Blakely. Good morning, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and members of the board. I'm here today to present a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for Automated Transit Network, ATN, pilot project P50320. Next slide, please. So what is automated transit? What is an automated transit network? So it's essentially an on-demand or scheduled service. It's, as you can see, individual pods that can accommodate 1 to 6 passengers, and it's really designed to create connectivity between major destinations, point-to-point connectivity. It can be either a network-based or corridor-based, and essentially what we're looking at is either battery-operated, it can be, or electric third rail. Next slide. So just a little bit of background on the ATN program. This is a continuation of a partnership with the ATL Airport Community Improvement Districts, and so the purpose is to really serve the Clayton and South Fulton County areas surrounding the airport, looking to improve mobility as well as reduce pollution and greenhouse gases. And there's been quite a bit of research to date on this technology, and so we want to continue to take that research and further understand the feasibility, and also to look at project-specific objectives for this project. We've identified various corridors, roughly about 75 to 100 stations with alignments, and this project would look at initial segment to serve as a pilot to look at roughly, could be between 5 and 25 stations for this initial deployment. Next slide. So the pilot itself would really focus on the airport area and connectivity, particularly between the domestic and international terminals, and really to develop a process and understand what will be needed in order for vendors to respond and for us to procure a vendor for this. We will evaluate bids and, of course, recommend the best qualifying vendor. But again, we want to get vendors solutions, alternatives, suggestions as we look at that process that fit within our mode of the solicitation. And really it's just to serve as a basis for future expansion of the ATN network that we've identified preliminarily. Next slide. So with that, again, I want to thank you and request approval of this resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the Automated Transit Network Pilot Project, RFP P50320. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Could I get a motion and second, please? It has been properly moved and second. Questions? Yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
sir.
thank you,
Sorry.
Madam Chair. Do we have a budget set for this pilot program?
Yes, so we have identified a budget of roughly $10 million for this program.
And have you been coordinating with the airport as to how and their movements or their potential riders for this pilot?
Yeah, we've had initial coordination with the airport as well as the CIDs, and we'll continue to coordinate that as we start to develop this solicitation as well. And of course, after a vendor is selected, to continue that coordination as a stakeholder.
And would it connect to the East Point Station and the College Park Station also, along with the airport?
So we are looking at different networks. This pilot itself would essentially just serve within the airport property, but we have looked at additional connections as you go out from the airport, Camp Creek Parkway, and some other corridors as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Durrett?
Would MARTA be the sole funder of this, or would the partnership with the AACIDs also extend to funding the pilot?
So definitely MARTA's committed to help fund this pilot. And again, it's an opportunity to identify partnership and potential for future investment as you look at expansion of the program. So we're definitely committed to investing in it as well.
In fact, Marcus is right, and in some cases, we anticipate some of the vendors bidding because this is a pilot and has the potential to grow in a modular way. They may themselves be very interested in funding or assisting to fund the pilot themselves.
Okay, but the CIDs are not expected to contribute to the funding of the pilot, and we're considering the work they've done so far to be their investment in this at this point?
We are partnering with the CIDs. You're right, there has been an initial investment of their limited budgets. And again, because it's a pilot, we can speak to the pilot itself, so we wouldn't be expecting more of them. But should this grow, we'd have to just kind of have a conversation about how this could be paid for.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification purposes, we're using the word pilot. Is it actually going to construct something, or is it going to just be more like a scoping study? If it is building something, what are the origin, destinations, and service that we'll put in place with that?
Yeah, right now, the intention is to build something, absolutely. And the question becomes what and where and how extensive. And I think through the slideshow, we're talking about 5 to 25 stations for initial deployment. But that remains to be seen. We're not being overly prescriptive here. We're waiting for these consultants or contractors to make recommendations to us in terms of what they can do. They come out and look at the site and make recommendations about just how small or how big this could be. But the intention is to have construction of something that we can pilot.
Within the $10 million budget?
Within the budget, yes. Mm-hmm.
10 million, excuse me. Yep.
Russell?
Just one, and I'll ask one here. I've been involved with the Curiosity Lab in Peachtree Corners, and if you're not aware of what they're doing up there, it's really substantial. They've been doing it for a number of years. Now, they actually have a track up there that they run these automated vehicles on consistently. They have internet set up, 10G and 5G systems and all that kind of. If you're not familiar with that, I'm happy to get you all up there to look at what they're doing and talk to them about what they've got going on up there, because they're doing just what you're talking about doing up there right now, running these buses along with stops along the way. So just a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Floyd.
We've been up for a visit up to Peachtree Corners and well aware of their technology and anticipate their interest in this.
Mr. McMurray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I'm not clear, is there an MOU with the CID and the airport that exists with MARTA at this point for this purpose of this project?
Yeah, so we have already started to develop that MOU and have conversations related to it, and definitely will be further facilitating that as well for that partnership, but yes.
I would just point out too, as the airport will be critical in doing anything on airport property. We'll take Federal Aviation Administration approval for doing anything that's, quote, inside their fence, which doesn't necessarily mean that's where the fence is. So that's pretty tricky. And then also, it's my in my memory of serving on the ATL board that the Airport CID is seeking funding also from the Atlanta Transit Link Authority. So is this duplicitous, or is that additive, or are they counting on the grant money plus MARTA money to satisfy the 10 million? That's a long question, I'm sorry.
So I believe that would be in coordination with their efforts to gain funding, as well as our commitment to help fund it as well. And understand that as part of this, we have done some preliminary research, preliminary feasibility look at it, but as we get further into it, we'll need to understand specifically specific sites, as well as the scale of the pilot as well. So we'll definitely keep that in mind.
One last question, if I may. Is this by this action, is this a commitment to MARTA to operate this pilot? I mean, is this it's on airport property, as I understand it. So is this a commitment of MARTA or the city or who?
The intention, when it comes to operation, the intention would be that MARTA is responsible for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One more question. Has the city of Atlanta provided the necessary approvals for this pilot?
I know that there has been preliminary coordination. I'm not familiar with any formal approvals, but again, I know there's been a consortium of collaboration, including the city as part of that. So that's something we can definitely take back and confirm that.
So is it fair to say, since there's not an MOU, there's nothing to take for the city council and the aviation department, right?
Currently not, but we will definitely work towards getting that MOU advanced and go through that process.
Okay, so all of those details will be hashed out, operations and easements and things of that nature, that MOU. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No additional questions? Let us take a vote, please. Motion passes. Thank you, Marcus.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any other matters to come before the board? No? Well, that concludes the Planning and Capital Projects meeting.
The Operations and Safety Committee meeting for Thursday, March 30th, 2023. My name is Bill Floyd. I'm actually sitting in for Chairman Al Pond, and I don't think anybody knows where he is actually today, but somewhere. Not here. So anyway, board members, you have in front of you the minutes for the February 23rd Operation and Safety Committee meeting. Is there a motion for adoption of those minutes? Oh. What am I looking at here? Okay. A motion by Frida Hartage, second by Jim Durrett. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, would you vote for adoption of those minutes, please? Okay, minutes are adopted. First item on the agenda today is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of FM-200 fire suppression system inspection and testing services, IFB B50144. Doug Miller, Director of Rail Maintenance.
Good morning, Chairman Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Doug Miller, and I'm the Director of Railcar Maintenance. May I direct your attention to Agenda Item Number 2. The requested resolution authorizes award of a contract for the procurement of fire suppression systems inspection and testing services, IFB B50144. Next slide, please. I will speak to these areas and then present the resolution for consideration. Next slide, please. The requested resolution authorizes the general manager, CEO, or delegate to enter into a contract for the procurement of fire suppression systems inspection and testing services, IFB 50144, with Cintas Fire Protection Services in an amount of $403,640. This is a reoccurring 3-year contract with no options and is being funded with local operating funds from the approved fiscal year 2023 budget. Subsequent fiscal years will be funded in subsequent annual budgets. Next slide, please. MARTA requires the services of a fire suppression systems contractor to provide safety-critical inspections and testing services of MARTA's FM200 fire suppression systems and the system's associated components. MARTA has FM200 suppression systems at various MARTA facilities. The FM200 fire suppression system inspection and testing is required in accordance with the following applicable codes or the most up-to-date current equivalent at the time services are performed. NFPA 2001 Standard for Clean Agent Fire Extinguishing Systems, and the current edition UL 2166 Standard for Halocarbon Clean Agent Extinguishing Systems units. 2 inspections will be performed each year at each location. The contractor will provide all supervision, labor, tools, equipment, materials, and transportation for inspection and testing of all work defined in this contract. Next slide, please. Originally, Pye Barker Fire and Safety LLC submitted the lowest bid in the amount of $288,458 and was determined to be responsive and a responsible bidder. The award was approved by the board in December. However, Pye Barker Fire and Safety declined the award. The next lowest bid was Cintas Fire Protection Services at $403,640. Cintas was also determined to be responsive and responsible. The price is determined to be fair and reasonable based on the independent cost estimate and price competition. There is no DBE requirement due to specialized licensing requirements limiting bidders. Next slide, please. At this time, I'm requesting that the committee recommend to the full MARTA board this procurement of fire suppression systems inspection and testing services, IFB B50144 with Cintas Fire Protection Services Incorporated, in an amount not to exceed $403,640. Chairman Pond, I will now turn it back over to you for consideration. Thank you.
Who's running this thing here? It's not me, though, is it? Okay. Good. Sorry, a little distracted there. Did we get a motion? Yeah, we got a motion and a second. So any questions or discussion on this matter? Hearing none? Or
Yeah,
you-
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. Okay, so help me understand, who was the vendor prior to this that had this service? Because we've had this before. I think I remember when I first came on the board, there was a vendor prior to this. Is this the same vendor?
No, Cintas isn't the one.
They're the one, okay.
No.
No, or is Pine Parker one?
No.
Neither one of them. Okay, thank you. My next question is, so what I understand is that the bid was given to Pine Barker and they withdrew.
They
right?
declined, yes.
They declined. Do we know the reason why? they
Manpower was one issue, and then there was some legal issues they had that I'm not privy to.
Okay, and so when that happens, that's the normal process that we take the next bidder, or we don't send it back out for
No,
rebid
we usually
again?
take the next bidder in my experience, yes.
Okay, all right. All right. That seems kind of unusual, because I would think that, I mean, if they bidded for it and then they at the time of them putting their proposal, they should have been able to evaluate whether they could do it or not. And then once they're given the opportunity to sign the contract, they withdraws. Is that just what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yes. It's crazy, though, the market out there right now. I mean, it's fluctuating a lot. People are having staffing issues. It's a big issue in industries, not just here and with parts. We're having a lot of supply chain issues and a lot of things. So it's not shocking that it would happen, I don't think.
Okay. But these two vendors were not previous bidders on anything prior to this? They were
I-
not bidders, but they were not a vendor of choice.
They're
prior
not
to
the
this.
current holder, no.
They're not. Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, that's all I have.
It's on. Oh, okay. All right. I'm getting a little adjusted up here. Just bear with me a minute, okay? All right, we're ready to vote. All in favor, or please vote. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Doug. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of B50206 customized bomb truck for MARTA Police Services. Deputy Chief Willie Davenport.
Good morning, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operation Safety Committee. My name is Willie Davenport, and I am the Deputy Chief of Police Operation. I direct your attention to agenda item number 3. This is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of B50206 customized bomb truck for the MARTA Police Department. Next slide. All America witnessed the value of a bomb disposable truck, most notable of a pipe bomb incident in New York subway in 2017. The truck was vital in transporting the officer and specialized equipment to the scene to assess and render safe and return the system to normal operation. Next slide. The history of LDV Incorporate Custom Specialty Vehicle is a global leader with 45 years of experience. From custom vehicles for bomb disposable trucks, SWAT vehicles, as well as our mobile command vehicle that we have today in service. Next slide. The benefits are, this is an upgrade from our 21-year-old bomb truck that we currently have today that we are using. It will serve as a response vehicle, a command bomb post, as well as provide the MARTA bomb tech officer the capability to transport specialized equipment such as our robot that weighs over 500 pounds, our total containment vessel, as well as other specialized equipment that the bomb technician carry to a scene to assess, render safe, suspicious packets or items, and return the MARTA system to normal operation. Next slide. Notice an invitation for bid was sent to 4 vendors, and only 1 bid was received from LDV Incorporate Specialty Custom Vehicles for $547,159. It was determined to be responsive and responsible. Our price study was conducted, determined that the price is fair and reasonable. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion assigned a DBE goal to this procurement. However, it determined that sufficient good faith effort had been met at 2.25%. Next slide. In conclusion, I respectfully request a resolution authorize the award of a contract with LDV Incorporate Custom Specialty Vehicles for the procurement of a MARTA customized bomb truck, IFB B50206, in the amount of $547,159. I respectfully request to turn this matter back to you, Vice Chair, for consideration.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion for consideration? Moved by Frida Hardy, seconded by Thomas Worthy. Any questions or discussion on this issue?
I have a question.
Jim Durrett.
Why does it say this is a 2-year contract when we're buying one piece of equipment?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking.
Oh, so a 2-year contract. I'm sorry. So once it award, the bidders award, the company gonna build the truck for us, so it's gonna take about 12 months for them to build it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
2 budget years, is that the answer?
Yes, probably.
Okay. Jennifer Hyatt.
Yes, I don't know much about bomb trucks, but are they all custom built? Or is there an off-the-shelf bomb truck that you can?
No, sir. By being a former bomb tech and a bomb tech commander, we need to upgrade. When I started, it was a 2-man team. Now it's a 5-man team with technology, equipment, additional equipment. Yes, this has got to be a custom-made vehicle for our road. We have 2 robots. Like I said, one weigh over 500 pounds, and we have another robot that will be transported on the bomb truck.
Okay, and I certainly want everybody to be safe, but is there a gap with our other local law enforcement jurisdictions that we need to have our own bomb truck versus coordinating with jurisdictions?
We need our own. So one of the requirements for FBI is to have a bomb suit, F6 robot. If we depend on other agencies to respond, that's a 4-hour waiting on another agency to respond. Our system would be down, waiting on another agency to come.
Okay, and my last question is, why do we think that we ended up just with a single bidder on this?
Hey, it's Chief Craig. For previous question, we have MOUs and mutual aid agreements with all our partners in the Uwasi region. So the urban security initiative that we all participate in, Cobb, Gwinnett, DeKalb, all the communities that we serve, MARTA serves in, we all share this equipment. When we have big special events in the city of Atlanta or in another jurisdiction, we have to provide on-call service for that jurisdiction and for the special event. So there's multiple vehicles being used at the same time. So we share those resources with all our partners, and that's why we have our own. We've had our own for 21 years. The second question was, I'm sorry.
Why do we think we only ended up with one bidder?
It's a very specialized vehicle, and this same company did our mobile command vehicle, and if you look around the region, that seems to be the only manufacturer of these type of vehicles.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions concerning this issue? If not, please vote. Okay. The motion carries. The resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for transit operator training courses, RFPP P45519. Mr. Peterson, Manager of Technical Training.
Yeah, so good morning, Chairman Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and esteemed members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Eric Peterson. I'm the Manager of Technical Training here at MARTA. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 4, requesting resolution authorizing approval of the extension of an intergovernmental agreement with Georgia Piedmont Technical College for transit operator training courses, contract P45519. Next slide. The requested resolution authorizes the general manager, CEO, or his delegate to enter into a 3-year renewal of our intergovernmental agreement for the procurement of commercial driver's license and National Safety Council defensive driver training for MARTA's professional bus operators and operations personnel with CDL requirements in their job description from the Georgia Piedmont Technical College. Next slide. Georgia Piedmont commercial driver's license training, 3 weeks, covers the following. New FTA entry-level driver training requirements, basic equipment familiarization, state pre-trip inspection, basic driving skills, all followed by state-qualified examiner testing. Additionally, Georgia Piedmont provides MARTA employees with National Safety Council defensive driver training on an as-needed basis. Next slide. Georgia Piedmont commercial driver's license training is used by bus operator candidates entering into MARTA's professional bus operator training program with either a Class C license or with a CDL permit. Approximately 70% of new hire bus operator candidates will utilize this program. Only those candidates entering our program with a commercial driver's license will not need to use these services. Next slide. Therefore, the Office of Planning and Controls and Technical Training is requesting that the committee recommend to the full MARTA board this resolution authorizing the extension of an intergovernmental agreement for the procurement of transit operator training courses at Georgia Piedmont Technical College for a 3-year period in the amount of $3.519 million. Next slide. Thank you, Chairman Floyd. I'll refer this recommendation back to you for your consideration.
Okay, is there a motion for approval of this issue? Oh, better see it there now. Okay. All right, any questions? Moved and seconded. Is there a discussion or questions concerning this issue? Ms. Hardage.
So the 3.5 million, is that just a done deal, or is that based on a certain number of people going through the program? Are we paid by the person, or we estimate it to be 3.5 million?
Yes, so $3.519 million would be the cap on this contract resolution. We pay by the employee that participates in their CDL training. And so should we have a fewer numbers going through, the cost would be less.
And I understand the importance of this, but Is there anything that's in the contract to the person that we train that they have to stay at MARTA a certain amount of time after we've trained them?
Not that they have to stay a certain amount of time. I'll hit two points on this. One is that the current offer letter does have them sign a statement saying that they will repay the services to $800, which was the previous amount. We've sent them over to Human Resources to update the contract to $2,700. Okay. And the other thing is that we're currently looking at avenues or exploring avenues that would require either that the license may just be applicable at MARTA, and so if they were to leave, that would move away, or also having something where MARTA is waived because we're self-insured from having a CDL requirement. So we are exploring other avenues. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Farson.
Yeah, so if they enter this program, it's, are you saying that, that they need to have a Class C license, but are they required to have the CDL permit, or can they just come into the system with that and go right into the CDL program that you're offering?
No, so we've expanded our program so that somebody with a Class C license can enter into the program, and then we will work with them to get their permit. Then they'll move over to Georgia Piedmont Technical College, where they move through a CDL program with entry-level driver training.
Okay, great. And this is a great way, once again, to build the workforce behind what we need in terms of drivers to participate in this. I think this is a great idea. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments, questions? All right, hearing none, please vote. Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of 15 Braun-type ADA minivans, RFPP P50253, utilizing the State of Oklahoma contract. Ms. Davis.
Good morning, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Kalisha Davis, and I am the Interim Director for Mobility. I am before you today for the first time in my 22-year career here at MARTA, and I am presenting agenda item number 5, a resolution for the procurement of 15 Braun Type 1 ADA minivans, RFPP P50253, utilizing the State of Oklahoma contract. Next slide, please. We'll take a look at the driving factors of the resolution, which are mobility ridership trends, mobility on-time performance, fleet availability's impact on service, and we'll also review general specifications and cost per vehicles, as well as funding for the minivans. Next slide, please. In calendar year 2022, mobility saw a 37% increase in ridership. The first week of January 2022, weekly ridership was roughly 8,500 trips. 8,500 passengers per week. By the first week in January 2023, we had fluctuated our way up to around 12,400, reaching a peak around 13,500 twice in the fall, once in the first week of October and the second in the first week of November. And for the last few weeks, particularly at the beginning of March, ridership was at right above 15,000 trips per week. Mobility riders have essentially come back to us en masse, and we've technically returned to pre-pandemic ridership numbers. Next slide, please. As we saw ridership trend upward in 2022, we simultaneously saw a downward trend in our on-time performance. The first 3 months of the year, we did achieve and or exceed our 90% target. However, by April of 2022, we had dropped below the 90% target, where we unfortunately remained throughout the rest of the year. In addition to elevated ridership noted on the previous slide, diminished vehicle availability, partially stemming from prolonged repair delays due to lingering pandemic-related supply chain shortages, was a significant driver of the downturn in on-time performance. Next slide, please. The addition of 15 minivans will diversify and expand the existing mobility fleet and thereby have a positive impact on accommodating the upward trending ridership. On-time performance will improve, and the amount of time a passenger remains on board will reduce, leading to a higher level of customer satisfaction. There will also be an enhancement of travel times and vehicle maneuverability, as minivans may be able to fit in spaces that a typical mobility L van don't, and drivers on the interstate may be a tad more inclined, albeit remotely, to allow a minivan in front of them as opposed to a L van. Next slide, please. The minivan of choice is the 2021 Braun Ability Chrysler Voyager, as the design meets FTA and MARTA specifications. All 15 minivans have Chrysler manufactured chassis. They all run on gas. Each is equipped with ADA compliant ramp, door entrance lighting, floor tracks for wheelchair securement, 3 passenger bench seating, and they all come with a 5-year, 100,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty. The cost of a single fully equipped minivan is $99,879, with a total cost of $1,498,185 for all 15 minivans. Next slide, please. Contract P39650, which is the current mobility contract with Alliance Bus Group, it expired in August of 2022. And through the Mobility Flexible contract, a bus procurement is in process to start later this year. The Braun Mobility minivans, however, will be taken under assignment of the Oklahoma State contract. Next slide, please. The Office of Mobility respectfully requests that the General Manager, CEO, be authorized to approve a total amount requested of $1,498,185 for the acquisition of 15 minivans. Next slide. Thank you. I kindly turn it back to you, Vice Chair Floyd, for consideration.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval of this item? There is a motion by Ms. Hardage and a second by Jim Durrett. Any questions or concerns? I have a number, and Ms. Davis, you're going to have to deal with the Oklahoma issue, I'm sure. Yes. But Thomas Worthy is first.
That's what I was going to ask. How in the world did we end up with purchasing this under the Oklahoma contract?
So the Oklahoma State Group, they've procured all of the vehicles that they desire, so they are giving us assignment under that contract.
That's called a piggyback. Maybe piggyback. Can you just add to talk about the time savings in doing it this way as opposed to going out with our own purchase?
I will, in fact, yield to Mr. Harold Humphrey to answer that question.
And if I can just clarify, it's not quite a piggyback, it's an assignment. So they're giving us the remaining vehicles that they have that they don't need.
Got it.
Good morning, committee. Harold Humphrey here. Yeah, so these vehicles are actually in Atlanta, ready to go. So once we get through this board process, we'll go pick them up and put them in the service within the next couple of months versus a procurement, which we have not put out an RFP for yet, that may take up to 18 months to get vehicles.
Mr. Durrett.
You know, once upon a time, we were under consent order to perform to a certain on-time performance, and you know, in looking at the graph for 2022, I'm getting a little nervous. Can you address that, Colleen?
Absolutely. We share that concern. So 90% is not only our target, that's our requirement. And it took MARTA the better part of a couple of years to finally successfully achieve 90 and above on a consistent basis. And then Kalisha said it really, really well. Not only did we have a workforce shortage and a parts and supply shortage, we also had, which is unique in the mobility space, we had our ridership return to pre-pandemic levels. So our ability to maintain the on-time performance in that landscape was incredibly stressed, and that is why, we asked Harold and his team to find some expedited way to get us back on track. Because if we were to wait 18 months before we could, resolve this, that concern that you and I share would be more widespread amongst our stakeholders and more importantly, our customers.
Ms. Scott?
So just for clarification, I believe you've already answered my question, but you're saying we're purchasing these vehicles from the state of Oklahoma, that they now currently own the vehicles?
They actually, they went through the procurement process and allotted a certain amount, but since they went through the procurement process, we're able to get them from assignment, so they are not owned by the state of Oklahoma, but they're available for us to get here locally.
So they were previously in the amount that the state of Oklahoma assumed they would purchase, but did not need until, so now they're available for us?
Yes, ma'am.
So are they replacement vehicles or vehicles in addition to what we have?
These are actually expansion.
Expansions?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Frierson?
Yes, my question has to do with the current condition of the fleet that we have. You mentioned that, a lot of issues going on with the current fleet, and we will need to have additional vehicles. How are we resolving the current fleet issues? Are these vans that are so old they need to be sunset, or we are replacing them, or just what does that look like?
Well, they're not so old that we need to sunset. They're a couple of days from being that old.
All right.
However, of course, the supply chain, it delayed a lot of parts and what have you to get those repairs during the pandemic. And of course, the regular wear and tear, accidents that literally take buses out of service due to total loss. So it's just the regular operational wear and tear that's naturally decreasing the fleet size.
Okay. And so with these additional vans, are they going to? They look a lot smaller than the vehicles that we currently have. Are you going to be able to get 2 and 3 wheelchairs on these things?
No, they'll only hold one, accommodate more ambulatory or non-wheelchair passengers.
Oh, okay.
So using the minivans to accommodate the non-wheelchair or fewer wheelchairs will allow us to better allocate the actual L vans that do accommodate 2 to 3 wheelchairs.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman Worthy?
Do we have any of these Bronability minivans in the fleet now?
Non-rev,
Okay.
non-revenue vehicles. The supervisor vans
Okay.
are basically the same thing.
I actually really like this idea. I think that, to Mr. Frierson's point, sometimes you need the bigger bus, but I've also seen, just on the streets, mobility buses running around with one person on them.
Exactly.
And so I really like this and applaud y'all for finding the vans from the state of Oklahoma.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Ready to vote? Please vote. And Ms. Davis, you've done an excellent job here this morning. I know this is your first time, but you've done an excellent job, and I would point that out to the CEO here that smiling about this presentation. You did a good job of presenting it and understanding the issue, so thank you for being here.
Thank you as well.
And I need to get whatever key this. Anyway, did anybody vote against this? I can't see it. So, all right, the motion carries then. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
All right. Next item on the, pardon? All right. Oh, there it is. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for MARTA natural gas supply, IFB B42422. Mr. Chafin, Director of Bus Maintenance.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, but I'll try my best. Good morning, Chairman Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. I'm Charles Chafin, the Director of Bus Maintenance, and this is agenda item number 6, the resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for compressed natural gas and natural gas supply, IFB B42422. Next slide, please. The original agreement was with Mansfield Power and Gas, and it was entered in April 1st, 2019 for a contract term of 24 months. The total contract was $17,082,278, and that supplied CNG to all of our facilities for the buses, along with 26 different G11 accounts at our support locations. Next slide, please. When we were putting out the new RFP, we had several challenges, pricing, some contract language and terms, and the optional years, which required us to extend the current contract 2 times to make sure we had the new contract in place. Contingency funds were released when this was done, and at the time, it appeared that the contingency funds would be enough. Next slide. Unfortunately, CNG is normally a very flatline and not volatile market, or it wasn't in the past. But during this extension, as you can see, it went almost quadruple the pricing. So that caused us a shortfall on funds. Next slide, please. So with that, our average monthly spending increased substantially, and then the remaining balance on the contract came to $654,141.45. which is 3.5% above the total contract value. Next slide, please. The Office of Bus Maintenance respectfully requests authorization for the modification and contract authorization for compressed natural gas and natural gas supply B42422 for the amount of $654,141.45. Next slide. I turn it over to you, Chairman Floyd.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion for adoption of this resolution? Motion and a second. So any discussion or questions? Mr. Durrett.
Is this natural gas coming from Oklahoma?
No, sir. This is local grown natural gas.
I recall back when I was a newbie here that we had different hedging strategies to control future fluctuations in costs. Can you apply that sort of strategy with?
When we were doing this new contract, because of the volatile nature, yes, CNG is going on the same strategy now.
Thank you. Any other questions? One brief question. Spending, if I'm doing my numbers right, 24 months, $17 million, $600,000 or $700,000 a month. Correct. How does that compare with what we spend on diesel fuel?
That's a question I would have a hard time answering right now. I mean, diesel fuel is still quite a bit more expensive, but our diesel fleet is only about 35 or 40% of our total fleet. So we're still spending less probably in diesel fuel overall, but the cost per bus is going to be higher with the diesel.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Durrett?
No, I'm glad you asked that question. Collie, do we have a strategy? I'm hoping the answer is yes, to phase out diesel completely over a certain period of time?
Yes. We are definitely, for the time being, when we started talking about our electric buses, we said, I believe the percentage I used at the time for diesel was about 25% of our fleet existing, and that we were going to start by replacing diesel with the electric buses. So at a minimum, the number of zero-emission buses that MARTA brings on, the goal there is to just take diesel right out of the picture. We didn't commit, there's a lot of 2040 and 2050 type of dates in terms of complete ZEB, and MARTA is working towards that, but we're still trying to balance that with the ability to have some kind of diversification of fuel mix, but bar none, that diversification, that mix will not include diesel.
Did you just say ZEB?
I think I said ZEB, but we don't have to check the tape.
ZEB, am I supposed to know what that means?
Zero emission buses.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. I did know what that meant, come to think of it. All right, any other questions or comments? If not, please vote. And the motion carries. So the resolution is adopted. Speaking of that, why don't we buy some electric buses while we're here today? So the resolution is authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA buses, 60-foot battery electric bus, RFP P50104. Mr. Chafin.
All right, so agenda item number 7. So this was an exciting one, working us towards that BEB goal or zero emission goal. So a resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA buses, particularly 60-foot battery electric buses, RFP P50104. Next slide, please. This contract will support multiple awards for transit buses, including the ART and BRT specialized buses for the next 5 years. This is part of the flexible bus plan that we proposed last year, going from 30-foot all the way to 60, including all kinds of propulsion types. On the 60-foot buses, we received 2 proposals. One proposal was determined to be responsible, and then the remaining bus types are under further review and will be going to the SEC committee for scoring. Next slide, please. This is just an anticipated schedule, barring that the bus lengths and propulsion types might change. This is our forecast for the next 5 years, plus expansion. Next slide, please. The MARTA Selection Committee has determined that New Flyer will supply those 60-foot BEB buses. They've been manufacturing buses since 1930. They have a location right here in Anniston, Alabama for training and for what they call their technology center. They've delivered 1,371 zero-emission buses since 2015. It's a very close match to what we originally asked for in our MARTA specifications. And this contract will include the buses, spare parts, training, and training aids. Next slide. Each year, we'll include a scheduled fleet replacement and BRT bus schedule or possible buys, purchases. Procurement for any fleet expansion may be included. We've set it up for 4 deliveries per year to spread it out and allow adequate time to be able to get these online and do our quality checks. And there'll be an annual work order submitted to include the quantity, size, and propulsion types of the buses each year. Next slide, please. This procurement is 5 years with no options. The total procurement value is going to be approximately $192 million, excuse me. And there will be 80% FTA funds utilized for these purchases. For today, the Office of Bus Maintenance respectfully requesting authorization of the resolution to enter into a contract with New Flyer for the amount of $58,545,015. And this is for 28 up to 28 60-foot BEB buses. And the first work order the authority anticipates issuing under this contract will support the Summerhill BRT project. And that is the reason we have expedited this particular bus. Next slide, please. I now turn it back over to you, Chairman Floyd.
Okay, you're asking us this morning to approve $192 million overall program, but only the purchase of authorize the purchase of up to $58 million. Is that correct?
I'm only asking for authorization for the $58,545,000 because we still have to score the other propulsion types and bus sizes, and then I will be coming back to the board with those recommendations.
Okay, is there a motion for approval of this request? Moved and seconded. So any questions or discussion concerning this item? Jim Durrett.
Battery recharge, what's the technology for that?
You don't get a lot of the residual charge back. You do get some, it's like 3% over the time that it's on the route. But the Summerhill BRT will have an overhead charging system that will keep us charged to allow the range to be able to be extended.
And are those going to be like at, I'm sorry, I can't remember all the planning aspects, but are they like down at the southern end of the corridor? where the recharging will happen?
Yes.
I'm being told yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Do we have any electric buses in the fleet today?
Yes, sir. We have 6 40-foot New Flyers right now. They were introduced during Earth Day last year. Been running fairly well, and we're still under the range and testing phase, but so far so good.
Okay, and if I understand it right, we're doing this way so that we make sure that we have these buses available when the Summerhill BRT project gets ready for them. Is that correct?
That is correct, because with these being 60-foot BEBs, I think right now it's a 14-month lead time, but we're also going to need time for training and development of our staff to use these buses before we actually go into service.
So the first of these buses, you're expecting delivery 14 months from now?
Right now, that is approximately what they're saying on a build time.
Okay, and when does the Summerhill BRT?
I think that gives us about 6 months before we actually need to use them in service, so that should give us adequate time for training.
Okay, and training is, I guess, the ability to run this bus?
That and for my technicians to understand more. It should be pretty close, even though it's 40 and 60, but there is a little bit of technology differences.
But we don't have any of these 60-foot buses right now, do we?
We have articulated CNG buses in service right now.
Okay, and where are they running right now?
Right outside our door.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments about this? What happened? Oh. Please vote now. The motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right, next item is a briefing on heavy rail wheel set supply chain issues. Mr. Miller. I thought you would have this resolved by now. You don't have this fixed.
Next slide, please. Good morning again. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 8. I will provide the aforementioned briefing on the heavy rail wheel set supply chain issues. Next slide, please. First, I will give some background information. We have a reoccurring contract currently with UTC to overhaul our heavy rail wheel sets. On the left is the photo of a wheel set. And this is the unit that we send out for overhaul. As the wheels wear over time, like if they have flats, or we check them during inspections and we reprofile them to bring them back to like new standards. Eventually, over time, the wheels get smaller, smaller, and smaller, and we send them out. This is the process that prevents us from having similar wheel issues that you may recall we recently experienced on the streetcar. We don't have that on the heavy rail because this process is in place. So once the wheels get too small, then we send the wheel set out, and they remove the axle and replace the journal bearings. They check the axle. That may be able to be reused. The gearbox is overhauled as needed, and then new wheels are put on and it's sent back, and then we reinstall them on a truck. And you can see in the picture above there is a truck, and each truck has two wheel sets. So here's the problem. We have recently been informed by UTC that the wheel set delivery that was projected for February has now been delayed until the first week of May. And that's to the vendor, to UTC. So we'll get them at, a couple weeks after that probably. So this is the latest in a series of delays, and this is all related to supply chain issues related to the war in Ukraine. One Ukrainian and 2 Russian suppliers are effectively out of business because of the war. So in May, it will have been at least 10 months since we've received any wheel sets. So we kind of saw this coming, so we have implemented the following mitigations. In anticipation of this issue, we had our vendor Kinky Sharia International, KI, send us all the serviceable used wheel sets from the cars we had recently scrapped. So those cars that were scrapped, the trucks had wheels that still had life on them. Usually we may go ahead and just get rid of them because it's not worth doing half a wheel set or a quarter of a wheel set. In this scenario, that's better than no wheel set. So, you know, we'll bring them back on, make sure they're safe for service, and then we'll install them on different trucks, and we can keep rolling. We can keep rolling that way. Starting last July, we suspended our L-Care wheel set replacement if the wheels were still serviceable. You may recall L-Care is our life cycle reliability enhancement program. This is our in-house overhaul program. So we went ahead and overhauled the trucks, but we just kept the good wheel sets on there instead of replacing them. So we saved, the wheel sets to use on something else. We also purchased additional axles under the KI CQ311 overhaul contract. We also have programs in place that have overhauled most of the wheel sets on our fleets. This included the L-Care programs on the CQ310 and CQ312 fleets, and the CQ311 fleet was completed under the recent KI overhaul contract where we did a kind of a midlife overhaul on the whole fleet. This has helped reduce our need for wheel set replacement, or we would have really been in bad shape if that wasn't the case. Some places are. This has resulted in no disruptions to our rail car availability to this point, but we have just now about worked through all the spare wheel sets that we have. Looking forward, we are now evaluating additional cars that are awaiting disposal and some long-term out-of-service cars as possible sources of serviceable wheel sets. We also have 36 good CQ312 rail cars that we rotate through storage since we have gone to reduced service levels. We decided to sit the 312 cars because they're a little bit less reliable than the other cars, so by sitting those out, we were able to, improve reliability. We have also shipped 52 wheel sets to UTC so they can be prepped for assembly once the wheels arrive so we can get them quickly. We will likely have to eventually sit rail cars for lack of wheel sets if this continues past May, and it could affect our ability to return to full service car requirements. And unfortunately, if we put more 312 cars in service, there could be a decrease in reliability by using those cars. We will logistically manage this situation to minimize the number of cars out of service waiting for wheel sets. This is an industry-wide issue on many railcar parts, not just these wheel sets, and so far we are in a better position than many other authorities. There are authorities out there that are sitting rail cars at this time. We will continue to be as proactive as possible to provide safe and reliable rail cars for our customers. We take great pride in our ability to maintain continuity of service through challenging times and will continue to do so. This concludes the briefing. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Miller? First of all, have we notified the Ukrainians and the Russians that they're inconveniencing us with this war?
Yeah, I wish they'd knock it off so we could get on with our life over here, right?
And the question about these, you said safe and reliable. Are we to the point where we're safe but maybe not reliable?
No.
Is there a combination?
We're not affected at all yet by it from a safety or reliability standpoint, and we will never be affected safety-wise. Reliability, if we have to use more 312 cars, instead of having the reserve of 36 cars that we're currently not using, if we either set have to set cars and have to pull them into use, then statistically the 312 cars are less reliable, so we could see a little dip in reliability. Hopefully it won't get to that point, but it is possible. I would be remiss if I didn't mention it.
But today, we don't see any end to this, or, I mean, there's a.
I'm waiting for word that the wheels are on the boat. And that'll be 200 wheels, and that'll hold us for a bit. Although we're behind now. We also have another wheel set contract. This contract ends in August, and we have another one out for an IFB right now with procurement. So we'll be awarding that soon, and then we'll get wheels on order for the next round as soon as possible to try to anticipate, as soon as possible.
So if they're gonna be here by May, they gotta be on the boat pretty soon then?
Yeah.
Is that right?
By the beginning of April, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. So
They're supposed to notify me when they hit the water. So that's when we'll know for sure.
where are they coming from?
Europe. I'm not exactly sure.
Where
in Europe, no.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Miller? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Jim, sorry.
Does this issue impact the Statler 400 fleet?
No, at this time, Stadler's telling us they're unaffected by it, but, it will be, the Stadler project is over a number of years in the future, so hopefully it won't.
I was also interested in your comment about actually going to old rail cars that had essentially been mothballed and cannibalizing what we could from those to be able to use that. Where is this mothball place, and how many rail cars are sitting there?
Well, honestly, at this point, we've gotten rid of about 30 of our older cars. That's where we shipped them to KI. We modified the KI contract and we got them off site. And we had KI send back the serviceable wheel sets. And that's what we've been living on right now is the serviceable wheel sets. And we currently have about 10 damaged 312 cars that we're not going to repair. So those will be a source. Many of them don't have full trucks on them now. A lot of them we've already moved the trucks off of and have we have them sitting on dummy trucks. They're in our yard right now.
Okay.
The short answer to your question. So
Okay.
they're here and we're available. And any rail car we've disposed, like the cars we shipped to KI for disposal, we pulled any possible parts off of them that we can use to continue to maintain our existing fleet.
And then it's up to KI to figure out if it's worth doing anything on their end, right? In
Right.
terms of recycling or?
Most of the cars we sent to them were all the 310 cars that had asbestos, and they're challenged. The 310s are a different animal. They've been hard to dispose of.
Yeah,
So.
okay. Thank you, Doug.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have 3 other matters, and I'm assuming this requires no board action. Is that correct? Okay, we have a letter of intent to utilize the state of Georgia contract for procurement of 24 non-revenue vehicles. Letter of intent to authorize the state of Georgia to contract to procure 5 portable ADA compliant restroom trailers, and a letter of intent to utilize GSA contract for the procurement of inspection, repairs, and preventive maintenance of commercial doors at MARTA facilities. Any questions or comments concerning those items? Okay, also included were your FY23 January performance indicators for information only. Anything else to come before this group today, this committee today? If not, we are adjourned.
Make this quick. At this time, we call to order the Thursday, March 30th, 2023, MARTA External Relations Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion for approval of the February 23, 2023 External Relations Committee meeting minutes? Do I have a motion? All right, motion by Ms. Hardage. Second by Mr. Worthy. And let us vote. Looks different than it did. Okay, and Hardage. Oh. Got it. All right. Moved by Mr. Frierson. You voted yes, Ms. Hardage. Your vote was showing up in the same column, so thank you. At this time, we'll have a briefing by Stephanie Fisher, Manager, Communications, Media Impressions Update.
Well, good afternoon, Chair Scott, Co-Chair Ide.
Excuse me,
Yes.
let me just say the motion to approve the minutes has passed. Thank you. Now.
All right, of course. Good afternoon, Chair Scott, Co-Chair Ide, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Mullinax, and members of the External Relations Committee. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I am the newly named Senior Director of Communications, and it is my pleasure to provide an overview of our media impressions for November 2022 to February 2023. Next slide, please. In November, MARTA was mentioned 4,000 times in the news, and almost all of that news coverage was positive or neutral in tone, and it had a $4 million advertising value equivalent, or AVE. Next slide. We saw two spikes in news coverage in November. One was when we announced that BRT would be built on State Route 54 in Clayton County, and when we all celebrated the 50-year service anniversary of bus operator Coy Dumas Jr. Other news highlights of the month include the awarding of the Innovative Development Award to MARTA's TOD team for the Edgewood-Candler Park TOD, MARTA Artbound's collaboration in the Next Movement, a social action arts campaign that featured local artists of color, and the donation of a rail car from MARTA's original fleet to the Southeastern Railway Museum in Duluth. We may have to go get the wheel trucks off that one now. Next slide, please. In December, MARTA received over 4,400 mentions worth $7 million in advertising value. 77% of the news stories were positive or neutral. The higher than normal negative news coverage came from two things. We unfortunately had a fatal train accident at Oakland City Station, and this is when we pulled the streetcar vehicles from service for wheel repairs. Next slide. Those wheel repairs, the closing of caps in the GDOT safety audit, and our holiday events, which our very creative marketing team called A Trip Through MARTA Land, received the bulk of the coverage in December. The biggest news spike came from the new rail car celebration that we hosted at Armour Yard, where many of you and many of our customers and stakeholders came together to see the new trains and experience the new train interior wearing virtual reality goggles. Next slide, please. The new year began with about 1,000 fewer mentions than we saw in December. Not unusual, though the holidays are a much slower time. Those 3,400 impressions were still primarily positive or neutral in tone, although claims made by a former employee did generate more negative news coverage than normal. January did have the largest advertising value equivalent of the quarter at $13 million. Next slide. Claims about more MARTA finances led to a couple of spikes in news coverage during the month. Other news highlights were preparations for the upcoming track replacement project on the Red Line, MARTA signing a lease with our neighbors across the street for office space. You wouldn't think that would be that compelling, but it got interest. And there was a great feature in Atlanta Magazine that came from one of their readers asking how our bus operators are trained. And I want to say a big thank you to the entire bus operations team, especially Howard Harris and Rick James. They helped turn a standard Ask Us column into a recruiting tool for bus operations. So thank you. Next slide, please. In February, MARTA was mentioned 4,800 times. Most of that news coverage was positive or neutral, and it had an advertising value equivalent of $10 million. Next slide. Our track replacement work received the bulk of the news coverage in February, as did the decision to advance bus rapid transit in the Clifton corridor. Other big news stories of the month were MARTA receiving a AAA credit rating from 2 credit rating agencies, a successful Transit Equity Day observance in partnership with the City of Atlanta, and an increase in opposition to rail on the Beltline as the Streetcar East Extension project advanced. Next slide. I know many of you had the opportunity to join us at the Mr. Dumas celebration, the Railcar event, Transit Equity Day, and even more of you had an opportunity to experience our customer service efforts firsthand on the track replacement project on the Red Line. And some of you even reached out afterwards with a note of thanks. And I want to thank you for your continued support of all of these newsworthy events. It is very much appreciated. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Fisher?
Thank you. Thank you.
Same here.
Oh, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just, I want to take a moment just to add my congratulations to Stephanie and make a quick couple of comments about her work and her incredible value she brings to MARTA and to this team. Thrilled that, that you're still with us and that you've taken on this new role. And I know that everybody here appreciates your strategic thinking and also the dulcet tones of Stephanie Fisher when she presents. So
Thank you.
Look for Stephanie to be doing many more presentations because she just sounds so great. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you.
Are there any other matters to come before the External Relations Committee? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Have a great day.